This week, we've played a whole bunch of demos from Steam's Next Fest, including Dark and Darker.
Nick here, and if I've learned anything in life, it's to keep the bees happy.
Hi, I'm Josh, and we're coming in hotter than the acid rain dropping on Ohio.
My name is Andy, and you are watching Video Game Tango.
Welcome to video. No, keep going.
That's
Welcome to Video Game Tango. Andy's not going to accept this.
No, it's just not going to work.
It's got to have 9 seconds of silence.
No,
Well,
we had a perfect amount of silence. It's fine, but that's a really weird intro. Yeah.
I would subscribe to this podcast.
I mean, last week, we talked about demos. We
Well,
said...
was it last week or the week before? Time is a relative soup.
Yes,
'Cause I
it's
missed last
a
week,
flat
didn't I?
circle.
We did talk about demos last week. Last week was Steam Next Fest.
Yes,
That's why
Steam
we
Next
played
Fest.
a bunch of demos
I
last
wasn't
week.
here.
Nope, that was the...
You were here.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah.
Time is a relative.
Yeah.
Jeez, Lou.
So we talked about Next Fest and the
Yep.
games that we were going to play. You just
And-
played most of them and then some.
And
Yes.
we did as we promised. We played some demos. So
I kind of did. I played a
I
demo
played a couple.
and then some other stuff that we'll talk about later.
So, where do we want to lead off the one we all played?
Yeah, let's talk about Dark and Darker.
Oh my god.
Dude, okay, so listen. Dark and Darker was everything that I hoped it would be. And then
Yes.
some.
And then some. I had an absolute blast playing. I only made it out fucking twice. I died
same.
almost every single fucking time. But I had so much fun, like from screaming like a wee child running from mimics or other players who were very much more kidded than I
Yes,
was.
vastly superior to us.
That was rough running into another player most of the time.
I feel like, before we go too far, there's two ways to describe this game. The obvious one, this is old school D&D Tarkov.
Yep.
Or any other Tarkov-like. Or you could describe it as multiplayer Dark Souls that was made around the year 2003. Right? It's very Heroes of Might and Magic,
Yeah.
Dark Messiah-esque, but exceedingly difficult. But yeah, it plays like a Tarkov. It's an extraction, quote-unquote, shooter. And yeah, it's I'm pretty sure our first time in, we immediately got absolutely dump trucked by like 3 skeletons.
100%.
Hard.
And it wasn't until like our 5th or 6th time into the dungeon that I think we were like successfully killing the basic skeletons.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then we learned essentially like basic skeletons
Yeah.
became basic bitches.
Yeah, you get that Dark Souls like, okay, I know their patterns. I know not to just panic
Yeah.
when I fight them.
And then most of the enemies, from what I can tell, I mean, we didn't get darker. We only got dark. Where
We
they
had a
had
dim experience.
we had a dim experience. Most of them do seem to have really set attack patterns. I imagine you could probably memorize just all of them at some point, and then the challenge is no longer the enemies in dungeons, right? The non-player controlled ones.
I have since watched about 5 people doing like solo runs. And they're playing a different game.
Yeah.
I mean, even just the fact that they're solo, meaning they don't have to worry about other people on their team.
Yeah.
And I've also watched them play in teams, but like solo rogues or solo rangers.
I watch a lot of solo
a
rogue.
vastly different experience than we
Yeah.
did. Right. But I mean, we had a lot of fun. And I think at some point we had a few team fights where we actually managed to kill 1 or 2 of their team.
yeah,
For sure.
We lost every team fight we got into.
Yes.
But it was still super satisfying.
Oh my god, it was. It's an instant. Like we knew, like after the first hour of playing together, that it was like, oh, this is a definite buy. This is a definite buy.
Yeah.
And then they even extended the demo out to because
All the way till tomorrow, Thursday.
Indeed.
I believe.
It's still-
It could be midnight tonight.
I think it is midnight
If
tonight.
that's the case, and you won't be able to play it after hearing this podcast. But
You wouldn't be able to anyways because this goes out on the 17th.
okay.
But yeah, they did lengthen the playtest. From what I understand, though, that is something that they have done for every playtest so far. Is they're like, Well, this playtest was great, but we actually have more content that we'd like to put out now for you to try out. And that's what happened with this playtest is they launched it initially so they could try out VoIP. VoIP was new for this playtest. And then they lengthened it so they could do the goblin portion, the other dungeon, the one that we didn't touch.
The darker part.
Yeah. Well, from what I understand, you're still on layer 1 of a dungeon.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just it's a different map essentially. Yeah, and I imagine they kind of do what Tarkov does in that way, where like you can choose like Tarkov has a giant persistent map, but you can choose segments of it.
Yeah.
To enter.
Yeah, that would be another thing. Is I would be excited to see more map layouts and different themes of the dungeon, because that basic dungeon we had, like we saw mimics and skeletons and zombies and a ghosts,
wraiths. Yeah, what do they call them?
My god! It was so a good variety already, and it just did it just wet the whistle to see more. I want
Apparently the
more.
dungeon
I'm ready.
has goblins. It has cave trolls. I saw
Oh
cave
my
troll
goodness!
fights.
Ooh.
But yeah, no, tentative quarter 3 release of this year. So probably not, but it might very well come out this year. And if you don't, I mean, my brother had it pointed out a good way. If you already have a Tarkov you play or a Tarkov do you have room for another one? I don't know. But if you don't have one, and you like games that are difficult and demand your attention, and reward you for taking the time to learn them. I think even just the few nights we played, the vast amount of learning I went through just playing a few nights. Your first session compared to your 20th are extremely different.
Your first session, you're just going to know what's going on. And then by the end of the first few hours, you kind of understand the combat basics and the basics of the map and extraction and stuff like that. But there's an entire magic system that we really didn't touch.
I was going to say, you dabbled your toe into the spellcasting class, the cleric there. I mostly played melee classes, barbarian, fighter, and then you were rocking the ranger there for a hot minute. It
felt really weird to try and play an extraction shooter without a ranged weapon.
Yeah.
So I knew that because you guys are both melee, it was already hard enough you guys trying not to hit each other in the first 5-10 missions. I didn't want to throw a third melee character in there. We did try at one point all melee characters, and I think we did even worse.
No, so here's the thing. It's really easy to not hit somebody in your party.
I'm just saying we've continued the proud tradition of Video Game Tango of me killing Andy.
Yeah, because Nick, the melee, there was not an issue in getting in melee combat and hitting each other. It was an issue of Josh hitting me.
Which is an issue of melee combat hitting each other.
But I mean, honestly, it's really not hard to not hit your other party members. Like, you just don't aim at them.
But I mean, I clipped you a couple of times.
We all hit each other at one point. And you learn. That's the thing, I mean, it was even being a ranged character, I still had to wait at times to shoot because I couldn't predict how you guys were dodging enemy attacks. And at least at one time I shot one of you in the back. But no, it's very interesting. Yeah. It does suffer from a problem. I wouldn't say my main issue. The first issue I noticed is that when you collect loot and you go out of the dungeon and you go into the overworld where you sell your loot to get money to buy stuff, it has a similar thing that Tarkov has where there's a bunch of different vendors. And in Tarkov, those vendors all have quests and reputation you earn with them to get specific things that those vendors sell. I'm assuming this game does the same because I saw that those vendors had unique items, or at least very good items that required a currency that we didn't have in the demo, or at least we didn't earn. The problem is there's 10 fucking vendors, or 12.
12, I think, yeah.
And if I've got chalices and boots and a sword, I need to find 3 different vendors to sell those to, because the leathersmith doesn't want to buy my,
goblets.
My goblets.
Yeah.
That's silly, right? That's just an unnecessary thing. If you want to have individual people that give you quest and reputation, that's fine. Just say that you sell your stuff to them. I don't need to literally go back in and out of menus to find the right vendor, even though, eventually you're going to learn which one is which.
Yeah,
right?
you will.
That's just an unnecessary level of obfuscation. I can't even say the word.
I also didn't like how the stashes were not shareable between characters that you made. I feel like you should be able to transfer things between them. But I mean, maybe that's just.
I think that would be really reasonable for someone that wasn't cracked at the game.
Yeah.
But the problem is that, like, I saw someone do a build as a rogue where it's all about not fighting people, not even fighting monsters. You take all these like smoke, screen, caltrops, invisibility skills, and you just go loot those lion heads chests that only rogues can lockpick, and then you leave.
Yeah.
And every run you're getting like 200 to 500 coins.
And you're just standing there stealthed next to where you think a portal's
you
going to
open this chest and you get like a pair of purple boots or like a purple Zweihander or two-handed sword. If you had shareable stashes, then you could just give it to your barbarian.
Yeah.
Which is fine if you're a normal person, but some people are really, really cracked at that game, like they are at any shooter or competitive game, and they would be able to very, very quickly
with
gear
one
up
character
best in slot all of their classes,
all their shit with one guy doing.
And then you'd have a dual issue where they would then dominate, and they'd also complain because it'd immediately be like endgame loot for the season, right? So I agree with you, because like it would have been nice. Like I'd found like a really cool wizard thing. I'm like, now I can try it a wizard, but then I remembered I can't really give this to a wizard. On the flip side, you can become a merchant, which we didn't look into, but there is a auction house system where you can sell your loot to other players. So even though you can't probably share your own stash, you could probably, once you have enough money, buy the stuff from other players.
That would be feasible.
I don't think you actually. So I'm pretty sure it actually works less like an auction house and more like trade chat in World of Warcraft.
Okay, I didn't use it, so I don't know exactly. How
I've seen it being used in Twitch, and yeah, it's definitely like you type in a price, please send tell.
Okay.
Type thing.
I mean, it's reasonable, to
Yeah.
have that in there. There's got to some kind of interaction between players. Yeah, one of those games that there's lots of little intricacies to learn. Each class is going to have its own unique skill ceiling. It seems like some classes are definitely better than others.
Yeah.
I was watching a lot of Wizard and Rogue and Rangers, and Rangers and Wizards seem to be hands down. Like I'm watching them solo 1v3 repeatedly in the same match. So it's early access is, very, very, very early game. There's tuning to be done. But the experience we had was fantastic.
Yeah, I loved it.
It was a good time.
We had one moment where, full on gut primal laughing when Josh, in a panic, trying not to get killed by the encroaching wall, ran through the pitch black through a tunnel filled with swinging axe blades. And fucking Mr. Beaned himself through there without getting hit once with a shred of health left. Like, that was iconic.
Yeah, yes. I don't know how it happened. Never
You
again.
had a moment. Yeah, no, it was excellent. You guys didn't try out. You guys didn't try out the VoIP. I only did for the last couple runs because I realized you actually have to enable it. It's not enabled by default. Because I was wondering, because I changed my hotkey so it was familiar to DayZ, because the controls are really similar to DayZ. So I turn on the VoIP, or I changed my keybind for VoIP, and I'm trying to talk to people, and nobody's talking back. So I'm like, oh, this kind of sucks. It's too bad nobody else is doing the VoIP experience, till I found out that you had to turn it on. So I did it for the last couple runs that we did. And there was one where we had that other group of three that was above us. With the cleric and wizard, and I think a barbarian, and
ranger, because I shot him.
Oh yeah. So while I was fighting the other cleric, I was having a blast. The reason I was saying "fuck you" was because every time I said "fuck you," he said "fuck you" back, and we had a fun "fuck you" back and forth. And listen,
what's your name?
No, it was no. I literally threw on protection on myself, whip out my mace, and I said, "Fuck you," and he responds back with "No, fuck you," and we just literally hit each other. First one to die wins, or first one to die loses, and that was a fun little interaction.
Hell yeah,
yeah, and I want more of that, because honestly, I find comedy in VoIP really no matter what's being said. I love VoIP. It's one of my favorite features in just video games in general. So I had fun with that.
Legitimate.
I know you're less into it, especially when it comes to Call of Duty style games.
90% of my experience with VoIP in competitive games is getting verbally trashed on, and then 9% of it is other people being like, please don't kill me, I'm trying to quest. And then 1% of the time you get some kind of iconic interaction.
Yeah.
That to me is not worth a fucking 16-year-old calling me every name under the book because he 360 no-scope me because he's on Adderall and he hasn't been to school today, and I'm an adult and don't have time to crack out on
a 35-year-old trying my best. I'm trying.
See, I love those interactions no matter how they go down, really, at the end of the day. As long as they don't shout out the N-word, I'm pretty good.
Yeah, that one, a couple other ones.
That happens.
One that hurt me the most was at the end. It's like 16 year. He had to be 16 or 12 or whatever.
What game is this?
I was playing the Call of Duty, but open world. The Warzone. Call of Duty Warzone.
Fight area.
And this dude at the end was like, man, I call you cancer, but that fucking kills people. So,
God. Saving that one.
I fucking love VoIP. That shit.
And I just shut the game off, which is what he intended, and it worked.
I love that.
Yeah. But yeah, fantastic, fun stuff.
Highly recommend, especially since there are probably going to be more playtests before it comes out. Yeah. Check it out while it's up on playtest. Put it up on your wish list. Make sure you're tracking it, and
it's one to keep track of.
Yeah, it's a fucking blast. So other than Dark and Darker, which we all played, Nick's got some games that he played on his own.
I did. Do you have the list in the order we mentioned?
Voidtrain.
So I wish I had more to talk about this one. So I started it up. Interesting little intro, and I played about 20-30 minutes of it. I didn't see nearly any of this stuff, and before I quickly realized this is a game that is designed to be played at the very least in co-op with more than one person. I didn't really know what I was getting into. I had some ideas in mind, but the moment I actually started playing, I'm like, okay, this is the Raft, but in a very unique locale with new mechanics. And that said, grappling around and looking for resources while the train is moving and trying to get stuff done on the train while you're collecting resources was not a job for one player.
Sure.
I'm sure it could be played solo, but I don't think that's where this game is going to shine. That said, I only got about 20-30 minutes into it. I didn't even get into any fights. I was just working my way through the basic researches and collecting of stuff. I had planned on playing it with my brother, but that just didn't end up happening, so I didn't get to experience the game as a full. So I don't have an actual opinion on it other than I do want to give it another shot, but I need to find somebody to play it with because I think that's where this game is really going to vibe.
If there is another playtest, which I don't think there is. I don't remember when it comes out.
I feel like I
have
feel
the notes
bad
here,
for missing out on that one.
Okay, so it doesn't have a planned release date, just 2023. We're probably going to get another Next Fest or some kind of demo excursion through Steam. I would totally be down to play it with you because I meant to play it with you this week. We just ended up doing other things. Yeah. I wasn't even necessarily. I mean, yes, I was busy, but it's because we were doing other things.
Yeah,
we prioritized
overall
differently.
Feel based off the kind of genre and theme and aesthetic choices. I think I could really like the game, but I played so little that I can't have an opinion on it yet. Other than it felt pretty solid from what I played. What was up next?
Next we have Phantom Brigade.
Phantom Brigade. So this is that kind of isometric mech game. That we talked about. Really
XCOM mech style.
XCOM-esque.
Yes.
Yeah. So I got to play it. Let's see. In no real particular order, the game has a pretty solid idea of what it is. It's not perfect. Some of the systems seemed a little unmeshed. The gameplay itself screams, take your time to learn me. It has a very large amount of room for you to learn all the little systems, aka as in like XCOM or any really tactical game, where if you want to be able to play on harder difficulties or succeed missions flawlessly, you're going to have to take advantage of every little thing given to you. And they give you a lot of room to play. So every turn, like if you start the round, you have a little time scrub bar, like a video editor on the bottom of your screen. And you say, do I want to, you can move and you can attack, you can shoot, you can defend. And when you click that button, you choose where in the timeline you want to start that action. And as you scrub left and right from the beginning to the end of the turn, which is 5 seconds, it shows a hologram of what the enemies are doing at that point in time. So if you got a guy with a shield, you say, I want you to activate your shield for 1 second. You can scrub through and see where the enemy is moving around a corner. When it begins to shoot in your direction, put your shield up there. And then at the same time, you can also say, okay, while you're defending, I want you to move here, and you see how long that takes. And then shooting your gun is similar, but shooting guns and doing stuff heats up your mech, so there's a heat system. All very well done. The combat, now that I've played it, it screams Into the Breach.
Okay.
Enemies predict, they tell you what they're doing. You are overwhelmed and outgunned, and you are going to win through precise, efficient play, right? And that's what Into the Breach is all about. I really liked it. I can tell out of battle, editing your mechs, there's a moderately solid customization system. From what I saw, you have all your gear has an item level that determines overall effectiveness of your mech, and the gear, your arm or your head or your weapons can have like equipment attachment slots to it, and that's about as much as I saw. Where the game kind of lost me a little bit is two things. One, the iconography and the UI is so slick and well designed and cool looking that I was having trouble at times figuring out literally what it was saying. Your weapon's AoE range, or like how its effective range, was like the vaguest fog-like ring around your character. And I couldn't tell, because like every weapon has a minimum and maximum effective range, and you get a donut around your character. I don't really know exactly where 78 versus 85% is chance to hit. A lot of little icons that weren't fully explained in the demo. Things like if you continue to shoot and you overheat and damage yourself, it tells you that. It doesn't tell you how much damage, where the damage is going. Is it going to your core, to your weapon arm, right? There's little things like that that I think playing the full game, you're going to have plenty of time to learn. Yeah. And the demo did a pretty good job of showing you. It was long. I got to do like 3 or 4 missions plus some overworld stuff. It was like 2 hours.
How long were the missions approximately?
Because you spend about... I'd say I spent about maybe 3 to 5 minutes a turn setting up a turn, and then it plays out. It speeds up time to full speed and then slows down as that 5 seconds hits. Yeah. Each battle probably took 20 to 40 minutes. Okay. The story's trash. It is the most generic. We're a nation and we're on patrol, and then we got attacked by the bad guys and they took us over, and now we're freedom fighters and we're going to take it back. It's like, cool. Yeah. But neat. You have an overworld map where you have like a mobile command unit, a giant semi truck that carries your mechs that you repair on the fly, and you go around the different provinces to defend them on little missions. So the overworld play is nothing new, but it looks solid. Overall, I like it. I think if I had the full game and I had time to learn it, it's one of those games where, like I said, if you want to take the time to learn all the little systems, it's going to reward you for that. I don't think it's going to be everybody's game, but for it to kind of come out of left field and have like a mech-esque XCOM Into the Breach feel, very, very solid start.
What would you pay for it?
What would I pay for it? Yep. Or what should a normal person? What do you think would be a reasonable price? $30 to $40 for it. Yeah. I think it's an indie game that deserves that higher bracket of price. Sure. But that's mostly just because I feel like most of the pieces gel well enough. I think it's almost there. Yeah. There was no part of the demo where I thought that needs a lot of polish, other than the story being crap. Sure. But I don't expect good stories anymore.
Do you know if there's going to be a multiplayer component?
Ooh, I don't. That game would be fantastic with one. I do find in games like this that multiplayer components are usually pretty common, but these games are so niche that it's rarely a selling point that's going to make the developer a lot of money. Right. But it would be a fantastic addition. I don't know how it would work, because if you imagine in single player, you get to see what the enemy's doing exactly. Yeah. How would that work with 2 players, that are both trying to predict the other one?
That's why, I don't know that it would necessarily work. Yeah. But to me, it screams like this mechanic needs... So you need to figure out multiplayer for this mechanic.
Yeah, if they could do that, that would be very, very fantastic. Yeah. They would have to kind of overhaul the core system, maybe remove the prediction entirely, and you just say over these 5 seconds, these are what my mechs are doing, and hope that the enemy is going to be where you're predicting, which would be very, very fun in and of itself.
Yeah, it'd be a different game, certainly. But
so I think Dark and Darker and Phantom Brigade were probably the best demos I played.
Okay.
Not only like the best potential games, but the demos themselves were very well done. Next up, we had the Xenonauts, which I mostly just want to touch on because this is a super niche game. But the first Xenonauts was a game that came out where the developer essentially said, we love the original XCOM that came out in the 90s, and we kind of don't like where the new XCOM went like super Marvel sci-fi and lost a lot of the really difficult tactical choices the old XCOM had. So let's make a spiritual successor to XCOM that's set like roughly around the 2000s, 2010s with that level of tech. And the first one was great. It was janky and clunky and clearly like a first attempt at a developer's pass at a game like this. And playing through this demo, I saw basically we remade Xenonauts in a better engine with more knowledge. Everything's better. And I really enjoyed it. And it was tough. I mean, even the first couple missions, I lost people. I almost lost the second mission in the demo.
And your units persist through missions?
Yes,
like
your units persist. Okay. And it's very much like OSR D&D. You get all these recruits, and sometimes they die super early on, but they survive. They get kills, they get nicknames, they get badges, and then you hope they can make it, to like the end of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of choices. Every choice you make is an opportunity cost. You could have done something else. You could be researching this tech, or you could be taking down that UFO, or, defending this point, and you can't do everything at once. And it's if you like XCOM style tactical games and you haven't heard of Xenonauts, you need to check this one out. So for those people that like that, definitely.
Yeah, never been my cup of tea, but like
cool art style though.
Right. I watch them and I'm like, I want to love this so much. But then practically when I play XCOM style games, it's just not my jam, unfortunately.
One neat thing I think that some people might be familiar with, the idea of Overwatch, not the game, but the concept where you get like a reaction shot when it's not your turn. Mm-hmm. A lot of games in this genre do it differently. This one had a neat take where any action points you don't spend on your turn goes into a pool that will be spent to do an Overwatch shot, and the more action points you saved, the more essentially accurate the Overwatch is going to be.
Okay.
Which is nice because in like XCOM, you have to actively choose to give up half your turn to go into Overwatch.
Right.
So that was kind of a smart decision. Like, it's realistic. If you didn't actually spend time doing stuff on this 5-second turn, you're literally just waiting to see if somebody comes by to shoot them when they come around a corner.
Yeah, you should get some kind of opportunity. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. From here, the demos started to get okay, or I had major problems with them. What was the next one that was up?
Boundary.
Boundary was the one I played with Josh.
Yeah, I played this one.
What'd you think of it?
I honestly was having a pretty good time with it. I would have liked to have seen another map. I think it was just
three times in a row.
Just the one map that we saw. I don't know if they were offering another one, but
I played on 2 other maps before you got on.
But yeah, we just played that one map like over and over and over again. But I was having a pretty good time with it. I also I think the foundation, the roots are there, because different game types, because we pretty much only played domination, or capture the point and hang on to it. But something like capture the flag with this would be absolutely fucking wild. And once you get over moving like the axis movement, it gets easier. Like it takes a minute to feel really comfortable moving in anything but what amounts to a straight line. But after like 3 or 4 games, I was at least spinning around and I was able to grapple really well. I enjoyed the game. I feel like getting the full game is you're going to get more customization. You're going to get those other game types, more maps. But I definitely feel like there's promise there.
For those of you listening who aren't familiar, Boundary is essentially NASA with guns. You are in a realistic...
Space Force for real.
Yeah, Space Force for real. You're in a realistic-esque spacesuit, moving in 6 degrees of freedom, fighting in space stations in space. So what Josh was talking about, learning the movement, it's one thing to know forward, left, back, and right and leaning, but yeah, when you can rotate and, fully flip over and all that, and you have a trajectory and a velocity and your guns have recoil that physically move you back, that's a whole other layer added on. So I had a bit of a kid in a candy store moment with this where I played similar games, but the immediate feel of this one took me off guard at how tight it felt, and I loved it, right? And I played some, and then Josh joined me, and then I played some more, and I watched a bunch of videos on it. And as the immediate novelty wore off, I realized, okay, the concept, like Josh said they have here, is really, really, really good. What they showed was essentially similar like the bare bones Splitgate early play we had, where it's like Splitgate knew what it was, and it still does. They've had some trouble, but
some identity crises.
It's, Quake with portals, right? And that's what it's about. And this is guns in space. But besides the novelty and, the lateral thinking of you don't need to peek around a corner and show half your body, rotate 90 degrees. Now it's just your gun in your head. It doesn't matter if you're upside down, right? You can run up to something and latch your boots onto it and run a full arc around a silo. It's very, very neat and novel. But the demo itself was just TDM, domination, and they had like a arena. Everybody had shotguns, moving around a space museum. And the out-of-game progression, you unlock new scopes and shit. But I kind of realized is like, this game is going to need something else for it to not just flounder like every other new novel FPS does.
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like. Your playtesters are there to tell you what they liked and didn't like about the game, what's wrong. We're not there to actually give you a solution. Some kind of game mode, I think, that would be unique to something that takes advantage of that 6-axis of freedom and that, containing your velocity almost not as fast as Tribes was back in the day, but
sure.
There is something there. It just needs to be developed. It ran a little clunky on my PC. I have a 1050 Ti.
Yeah, I think it's just the old graphics card at this point.
There was no real stuttering. It's just I had to turn it down a bit. I could tell it wasn't running at 60 FPS. But the gunplay felt great. The sound is on point. Like you can hear all tenor or treble turned down, the gun firing off, and the clunking of your boots when you're touching stuff. Other than that, it's like mostly silent because you're in space.
I imagine that just really adds to the tension, though.
Smoke grenades become perfectly radius spheres because there's you're no gravity.
Yeah.
But yeah, it needed I saw a lot of suggestions, and they had a clever thing that Subnautica did this. Press F8 anytime in the game to give us feedback. Right. So I did. I said this game needs micrometeor impacts. It needs electrical arcs coming off broken machinery. It needs big asteroids or boxes that you can push around to use as active cover. Like if one of us could be pushing a box while the other one's holding on, shooting around it, man, that'd be cool,
sick. Yeah.
Right? As it stood, it was static environments with minor breakable terrain that caused some debris. You could shoot through solar panels, so it was visual cover, but wall banging was a thing. But yeah, it was very bare bones. But what was there, like I said, great concept.
Bare bones, but the bones are good.
Don't sleep on it. You make some more unique stuff to this game, and I think it could be really, really good.
Definitely.
Yeah. After that, we had
Darkest Dungeon 2.
Darkest Dungeon 2. Either you said you almost got to play it, but then you
I had it on the load screen, but then I had to cut it. I had to cut that bait so I could play Dark and Darker, which, I mean, I had a great time doing that. Yeah. So
yeah, at the end of the day, with Darkest Dungeon 2, you kind of already know what you're going to get into. So
yeah.
So I did play it.
Yeah.
I never beat the first Darkest Dungeon. I did sink a good sub 100 hours, but a handful of runs and attempts. I know you played it, but did you play it?
I played a little bit of the first one. I watched more than I played.
I watched a lot.
It's a great game to watch. Yeah.
They really struck gold with the first one. They had this feel of let's bring a difficult tactical element to Diablo, right, or to D&D, right? This is that gothic horror combined with the narrator and, you know, running a team, and some of them are back at town and your guys are going insane and all that. All that surface stuff is there in Darkest Dungeons too. Where it threw me for a loop is in this one, you don't have a town that you're at, and you don't set up a town and do all the town stuff and prepare and get ready for a run and go run into the dungeon and hopefully make it back out. No, you're in a wagon, and the wagon is going to like the boss that you choose at the beginning of a run. And in between locations, you're physically controlling this wagon, which is running from point to point. And the point-to-point system is identical to Slay the Spire. You have a branching system. Each node has, you know, an enemy or a hard enemy or a treasure chest or a store or an event. Some of them are shown to you, some of them aren't, depending on like upgrades to your wagon. But you just choose, you know, binary paths or trinary left, right, or middle. And while you're going between points, like there's like little leaf bushes you can hit that seemingly sometimes give you stuff. Seemingly sometimes they harm you. I couldn't really tell. It's so fucking gimmicky. Like I thought it was going to be this integral part of the game, but it's literally like we couldn't find a reason for you to be doing anything between points. So here, steer this wagon with the worst steer. It's just left and right. Like you'd tap left and your wagon would like turn left way more than you want it to. So you can hold right to like counter steer. And it took me like a few minutes just to get the fucking wagon to go straight down the road.
Yeah.
And then you get to a point and it like might be an event or a store. And then you have the traditional Darkest Dungeon combat, which was fine. One thing, and I don't know if the first game had this or not, but when it's fighting the monsters, horrible choice for your demo, maybe great for the actual game. You don't get to know anything about the monsters until you've seen them do something. So you don't know what their attack is until they do it, and now you know what that attack does, right? So out of the 5 or 6 fights I had in there, some of the monsters were only in a few of them. So I didn't really get to learn. I had maybe one opportunity to see an enemy more than once where it's like, okay, I know everything this guy does, right? And the pip system Darkest Dungeon uses where you have the 4 rows for the heroes and the 4 rows for the enemy, and you have to be in one of these rows that are lit up, and you can hit the enemies in one of these rows. It made sense for your players, but it was somehow like color-coded and inverted for the enemies to where they were using attacks that, from what I could tell, they weren't allowed to use from the spot they were in. It's like you were supposed to read it from their perspective. To this day, there's a few attacks. I'm like, I specifically knocked them out of that pip zone to think that they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I couldn't parse it. On top of that, they went ham into the system of relationships where your characters, each one has a relationship with another one in the party. So you've got 4 characters. It's like, 16, 20 relationships, right? And the better the relationship, you get better events, and they have better, like, resolve moments if their resolve is tested. And if it's worse, they fight each other and all that. Half of the resolve penalties and bonuses I got were as you're traveling in the wagon, your characters just say random lines, and then you get like +1 or -1 resolve.
Okay.
So like you're traveling in between events, you're playing this gimmickly little game where you're trying to hit leaf things, and I've lost more resolve due to random RNG going between events than I was able to regain through the whole demo with this one particular pair between like my alchemist and my paladin. It was like, that's taken all control out of my ability to affect the relationships when the majority of it's just like, hey, stop hogging all the meat or whatever.
Yeah, especially if it's done while the game is effectively idle at that point. Right?
Yeah, you're literally just holding W and then pressing A and D to try to hit leaf piles, which I couldn't tell if these random events were from me hitting the leaf piles or not. I think I got a coin at one point hitting one. It's such a weird direction to take the game. It's like, you know, it's one thing to kind of copy Slay the Spire and be like, okay, we're removing the whole dungeon system, which I really liked about Darkest Dungeons, that you kind of got to pick a path. It wasn't too different from Slay the Spire, but it was, you know, kind of unique to the game. To this is just a clearly ripoff of all the other Slay the Spire clones. To this really ham-fisted relationship system, that I just don't know why they took this tack with it. You know, you had a thing with the town and the dungeon, and to me, it didn't feel like I was doing anything in a dungeon. I was fighting bandits on a road, and I never even got to the dungeon, right, at the end of the demo. Mm-hmm. You do have a boss fight that was gimmicky as fuck, and I almost lost because I didn't know what I was getting into.
Yeah.
I did manage to beat it. But I just felt like a lot of control was taken out of my hands, and I understand the game is about making the best of the situation you have, right? But bad situations should arise from either poor planning or bad decision making, not RNG, especially in games like this, right? Or at least the RNG should be happening at the beginning of the run, right? Like we're hitting you with these curses at the beginning of the run. You can't use these abilities. Now you know that going
makes
into
sense.
The run,
yeah.
Right? But no, and I don't know. I didn't like it. It did not feel like what I was expecting from Darkest Dungeon 2. I feel like they really pivoted hard in a different direction for seemingly no reason. I mean, the first Darkest Dungeon did great for what game it was. So I guess we'll see what other people have to say. I was just...
Or if there's more to it, maybe there's a character sheet that tells you the character's likes and dislikes, or
you could
for the
learn
relationship stuff.
But was a relationship system like? Was it
probably not necessary? But they're probably just reaching for more mechanics.
It seems so important to the game. And the fact that half the relationship modifiers I got were from random quips said between points of interest.
That's a little bit ridiculous. Like the loss of agency and like affecting
maybe that's not standard. Maybe you don't lose or gain that much in a normal run. And I just had bad RNG, but that's
still part of the mechanic
demo, right? So yeah, I mean the combat's still there. That I don't remember enough about the first one to know if there's new moves that they didn't have. I mean, I recognize a lot of the same characters and same abilities. I had the ability to upgrade 2 of the skills at the start of the run, or like halfway through it, out of the 20 total skills I think I had between the characters. Not knowing what I was going up against, I took defensive ones, and one of them never came up the whole demo.
Disappointing.
So it's like, okay, if I had the whole game, I learned, okay, I know I'm going on this particular boss run, I'm going to be fighting enemies that cause this debuff to upgrade that skill, but that's the kind of thing where I start talking about, like, your demos need to not be wholesale cloth your video game. You need to modify them for the fact that they are a demo. I don't know. I hope you guys get a chance to try it and see if you have a similar opinion, or at least we have a friend who really played the shit out of it.
Yeah, we do, yeah.
I'd like to see his opinion on it. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, I probably won't be able to get another demo cycle in. It looks like it comes out soon. It's May 8th.
Okay.
So this might be the last time there's a demo before it comes out.
For the audience, just watch someone play it before you buy it. Go sit down and watch somebody play through like the first few levels.
And when it comes out,
see what I'm talking about.
There's going to be 1.5 billion people that play it. It's Darkest Dungeon was a huge game when it came out.
If this was just more of the first one, I almost say feel free to buy it now. Mm-hmm. Like, I would be willing to say, just pre-order the second one because it's more of the first one. You like the first one, you like the second one. But this is different enough that I think, you really need to hold your reservations. And
that's kind of opposite of what we were thinking. And from what we were seeing, it's like, oh, okay, well, it's more of the same, more of the good. But it seems like it's kind of, there's a little bit of good in there, but it's more of some of the different.
Yeah. What's up next?
So, just the rest of the games that you played.
So I played roughly 8-10 other games. There were a few that were like, thumbs up. That's a game, right? There was, if I have that list up, there's one I did kind of want to call out, Battle something, Dungeon Drafters. You like little card-based anime games? Solid, right? But a lot of these demos, you can tell either 3 situations. A, the game's not ready to be played yet, and they put it out anyways. 2, they made a demo of their game where they just took a part of their game wholesale and made it a demo. They don't teach you nearly enough about how the game works, so your first experience is awful. Or 3, the game's just bad. Mm-hmm. A few of these, I was like, this seems like it'd be a really great game if it was somebody's first video game out of video game college.
Sure.
But most of them were, they do such a poor job of communicating to you how the game's supposed to work, or the tutorials, it doesn't cover important things, and they just throw you in, here's the gameplay. And you're like, I don't even know what the fucking buttons do.
Yeah.
Dude, you've got 9 buttons on my hotbar, and they're just pictures. And it was unfortunate. Some of them just kind of felt like ripoffs, but I did play Desynced, Operation Harsh Doorstop, yet another Zombie Survivor, Broken Arrow, Infection Free Zone, Dungeon Drafters, Humanit Z, and Dark Envoy. I would not purchase any of these games in the state they're in. Some people might really like them, but they were milquetoast, right? Or bad. I don't want to call anyone out in particular.
You're not. Listen, you're playing a demo, so this is honest feedback from somebody that's played a portion of a game that is not complete. So take it for what it is, and while we have opinions on all these games in their current state, they are totally subject to change. And we've seen games that have,
could be.
We've seen games that went from a garbage demo to great game
Look at me
the
now.
end of the day. Yeah, look at Josh. Started out weak, ended strong. So
games go through a crazy cycle in development. I mean, if you watch any game documentary about what your favorite games look like when they were in early alpha, they don't look anything similar.
Oh yeah. Let's take Overwatch, for example. Let's talk about a AAA title. Overwatch started out as an MMO.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So,
they're very ephemeral at first.
Yeah.
Some of these felt like they were pretty far along, but also just maybe not bad, but janky as fuck.
Yeah.
And I've played a lot of video games. I'm maybe not the audience for some of these games, and I'm generally negative when it comes to games. So I could be being overly harsh on a few of these, but it's just it reminds me that a lot of people go to great lengths to make these indie games. They put their heart and soul into them, and the only problem the game has is that the designer is novice, and they haven't learned lessons yet. Yet another Zombie Survivor, Dark Envoy, Desynced fall into those categories. I'm like, I can tell you're trying. Good job. Hopefully you're not a multi-employee studio that's sunk a lot of money into this, because this is clearly novice work. Doesn't mean it's bad.
No, for sure. And listen, everybody has their first game, and especially
you got to have your first at some point.
Yeah, I mean, most coders and developers they start solo nowadays. The indie scene is huge and growing because of it. Thank you.
Yeah.
For all of your contributions. People like Concerned Ape really kind of paved the way for the single developer
Valley,
studio.
right?
Yeah. Single developer studio to put out a game and get a ball rolling and turn into something bigger. So, we're not giving reviews on these games as much as we are our first impressions. And remember that they are first impressions, not full reviews. We don't really do reviews on Video Game Tango because at the end of the day, we don't want to quantify somebody's experience, between 1 and 10.
Yeah.
Because we all have we have varying taste amongst ourselves. That's actually one of the things that I think Video Game Tango does well, is that we don't always agree on games. I play a lot of games that you guys wouldn't be into, and vice versa, right?
Yeah. Something I learned early on is your goal in a critic is not to find the biggest or best one. It's to find the one whose views align with yours.
Yeah.
Because their job then is to find things that they would like, and you agree with them, so then you would like them as well, right? Yeah. So in that sense, there's games Andy likes, or Josh likes, or I like, that the others don't like. That's valid, right?
Yeah. I put 2,500 hours into DayZ, you know what I mean? So, and these two, that's never happening.
So if you've done that, then you'll probably like a lot of the games Andy likes.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, just everything we have to say, it's while there are critiques of our own opinion, they are just based on our own opinion and our own experience. So, we aren't putting anything in concrete here. That's what the game developers do.
As a last note, I just want to point out, if any of you, any developers or whoever doing these demos, if you happen to hear this, you're looking for Next Fest news, you got to remember that your demo is your first impression people are getting from your game. If you are not coddling them, showing them, here's this little picturesque slice of what I want you to see, and you're throwing your shit in wholesale, here's just a chunk of my game with no explanation, go. Yeah. Your game's going to flop. People are they just got to try it for free over this Next Fest, and they're like, what the fuck was that, right? Take your time. Demos are as important as first levels in a game, right? Yeah. So the reason first levels are sometimes made at the end of the game's development. You make the rest of the game first, because getting that first experience is so fucking important. So especially in the glut of games we have nowadays. So work on that next time.
First impression is important.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in the mire. You got to stand out. So no, that's totally right. Make your demo stand out. Make sure it is of demo quality. It's a demonstration of what you want your game to be when it comes out. So definitely. And if any of these developers are listening, hey, don't take what we say to heart too much, especially if we're
three people.
Especially if we're critical on your game. There's going to be people that like it, and keep it up. Continue to learn from your critics' feedback, and make the next great game.
Every single one of these had something good in them.
Yeah.
That was worth doing, except for Humanity. That game's awful.
Well, we have one more title we want to talk quickly about, because we are running a little bit long now, or we will be soon. We have spent this week playing Valheim.
Yes.
Amongst Dark and Darker and the rest of the demos these guys played, I've been spending my time exclusively on Valheim because I'm working on the back end a little bit. So we decided it's time to jump back into Valheim. We wanted to get as many of us in the same server as possible, and we had issues with that last time. So I said, hey, I got computers laying around. Let's make a dedicated server. So that's what we did. And while we have been having issues, not necessarily with the game, but with the server itself, and Valheim's seemingly just god-awful netcode, we have been having some issues, some technical issues, a little bit of lag, and having to restart servers a bunch. But other than that, the gameplay is good. It's as good as it was.
Yes.
We are thoroughly enjoying ourselves.
Oh, my goodness. Twice as nice.
We've experienced a few new things.
Yeah.
There is a equivalent of the troll from the Black Forest now in the swamp.
I am terrified to see what the mountains offer.
Oh, God. Dude. I don't even know. If they keep adding stuff like that. Adam and I went and hunted a few of them the other night, even knowing what they were like. We still don't know exactly how you spot them. We have a pretty good idea now that we fought a few of them, and I don't want to spoil it. But, Adam's like, oh, there's a draugr there. And he shot the draugr. And then the draugr grew a fucking limb, and it's like, oh, that's an abomination.
Yeah.
No, dude, that thing looks like the fucking creature from Stranger Things season 2.
Yeah, it kind of does.
Yeah, stomp it, or season 3. Yeah, the thing that crashes through the fucking mall. Mm-hmm. That's what that fucking thing looks like. It made of old dead trees and shit. It was intense.
Yeah, between the Hearth and Home quality of life update and now the big Mistlands update, I mostly wanted to experience new Mistlands content with all the other patches they've had. The game is generally all around better. They're adding in a few new building modes, and there's always tweaking and adding. I'd say if you haven't jumped on the Valheim train yet, now is as good a time as any.
Yeah,
there's so much content available. A lot of that's grind.
It is it's a survival crafter at the end of the day. At its heart, it's a survival crafter. And while the theme is really cool, you're Vikings, it is survival crafter at heart. So if you're not into survival crafter and the grind that's associated with it, probably not the game for you.
Do keep in mind that it is better with multiple players. You can play the game single player. However, every player you add, the grind does not increase linearly.
No.
I've been spending roughly 4 to 5 hours a day just doing chores so that when everyone else jumps on, we have enough stuff prepped and ready to go that they
so
can
we
do
can
the
go
fun
do
parts.
we can go do more fun chores.
I've literally
like
been
mining or
exactly.
I've had to expand our farm. Yeah, our fun thing is mining.
Yeah.
We all go mine a copper node.
Our first 2 nights playing, all I did was get food. I mean, that was everything else was because it's a survival crafter and you're going to run into other ingredients and things that are necessary to in the grind. But my whole 2 days was spent killing fucking deer.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've spent 2 in-game weeks over the last 2 days just farming. carrots and turnips, just trying to get up enough stock so that we have food on hand. But I like it because this is the kind of game. This is your Stardew Valley or your what's the Animal Crossing, where I throw on music or a podcast or a comedy show, and I'm wrapped up in a blanket. I've got my coffee, and I'm just digging in the dirt. The game isn't there. It's just a thing for my eyeballs to do while my brain listens to a podcast.
Yeah, 100%. Even when I'm playing with you guys, sometimes I have a stream going, and I'm paying more attention to that than I am the game because, mining out a copper node can be like a stressful event, but once you get it down, not really as much.
If you like that part, then you get the fun part of actually delving into a crypt or, exploring a troll cave or going up the mountains, God forbid. I mean, even where we are, we're getting into the third biome, and there are 2 more that we've already done past that, plus then the Mistlands on top of that. We have a ways to go.
We do, and it's because we continue to add more players that that we have that much. Because honestly, like I have a few levels that a few maps or worlds that I've played by myself, and like getting to bronze takes a couple hours.
Yeah, if you're just doing it by yourself, you just need the basic stuff. Yeah,
I threw together 4 walls, fucking fire in the middle of it, and some chests, and then I went adventuring, found a bunch of copper, brought it back, smelted that shit, got bronze.
Yep.
And it took a matter of just a couple hours.
But yeah, it's one of those games, especially with your friends, where it's going to generate the funniest moments.
Oh my God, yeah.
We had a moment where one of our players literally had a piece of candy moment, and he almost drowned. Those things happen. And then
there's going to be the frustrating moments, and then there's going to be
you got to learn to not get frustrated. You're going to die in Valheim. You're going to die a lot. You're going to die to stupid shit, and you need to learn to laugh about it every time.
That said, if difficulty is one of the things that keeps you away from survival crafting games, this is on the lower end of the difficulty scale in my experience with survival crafters. So I
always have an opportunity to get your gear back.
Yeah.
You lose levels in your different skills, you're never really going to notice much of a difference unless you're like really late game and you die a bunch and you're like, okay, now my stuff is slightly worse, but it's always incremental.
It is. So. It's not the most punishing of survival crafters. It has some difficulty, but like even combat, you can get that down pat, and really combat can become second nature.
Do we know if magic is? Do we have to wait all the way to Mistlands for the magic?
Well,
we sure do.
I don't.
Well,
know for 100%.
I do.
Okay.
I won't. I'm really not going to spoil anything here. But it's going to be a while.
Okay. I mean, because I'm like, I keep hoping I'm going to stumble across the thing here soon, but I guess I'll keep hoping.
Yeah. Mostly, swamps aren't going to be that bad. See, some players are really good at this game, and some are not, and that's just kind of
facts.
And when we attempt to progress in the game with everybody together, all shit goes to hell.
Yeah, it does.
Adam and I went in, just the 2 of us. We're like, hey, want to go get some iron? And we ran through and we did like 2 crypts, no problem.
Yep.
But I knew if we had all 5 other players there, we wouldn't have made it halfway through one crypt without the whole fucking team dying, because it's just more chaos, right?
Yeah.
So I think if we could individually kind of like little groups go get the iron we need to get through the swamps, we could probably get to the mountains actually pretty quick.
Yeah.
It's not going to be as slow as grind as mining copper in the fucking Black Forest, right?
So, you just need to split into war bands and go do bands, go do different things.
The only issue with war bands is there's only a couple of us that know how to deal with the elementals in the mountain biome. So
this game, if anything, it rewards you unendingly if you prep in advance.
Yes,
everything is prep, down to like making your own roads to the swamp and lighting them. Like, if you're willing to go that far, that's a way to control the difficulty of the game. If you want the game to be hard, just run in there bare-knuckled, full of cocaine, and like try to punch the leeches to death. Like, the game will punish you for it, right? But yeah, you take your time, you do things nice and methodically, and it's not nearly as hard as you.
I mean, the biggest boon in the game is the rested buff.
Yeah.
For being comfortable.
Chilling out next to a fire for a few minutes. Yeah.
So, I mean, it just goes to show that being prepared is paramount to your experience in Valheim.
Before you get to stepping, get to prepping.